So the thing is, I have owned this iPad for about a year, and in all honesty, I barely used it right or in the way I originally planned to. And right now I'm having second thoughts about owning this, and you might have that too. So let me explain why you might not need an iPad. First and foremost, I want to talk about why I thought I needed an iPad. And as most people, I feel like the first reason that actually contributed to me even thinking of getting an iPad was because I had friends who had iPads. And to be honest, it's a big flex calling them my friends because they are pretty famous online and you might have seen them before. I also try my possible best to get them to comment on this video too, because why not? I wouldn't necessarily call it peer pressure. I would most likely want to refer to it as a subtle influence, if I may. These guys are basically into animations and they work with their iPads. I used to make animations back in the day, but I kind of had to let go of that whole dream because I didn't just enjoy the process. And anytime we decide to hang out, they will both pull out their iPad Pros and their pencils and just get work done, just doing cool stuff. And I was there with my fat HP laptop at the time and I basically just couldn't relate. A few years passed and he has the M4 iPad Pro. Maybe he has even gotten a different one by now. He has the M2 iPad Pro, which was the iPad I actually unboxed on the channel a few years back. And now I have the M1 iPad Pro.
Clap for Jesus. Clap for Jesus.
Now, ever since I got an iPhone and then a MacBook, I kind of understood the whole hype around the Apple ecosystem. And I feel like anyone who doesn't understand the whole hype around this thing is possibly because they only own one Apple device, possibly just the iPhone, and basically have never got to experience what the ecosystem is like. Because those who have, they know it's the real deal. I made a video talking about my Apple ecosystem and shout out to everyone who came from that video. The iPad was basically another purchase for me to use more Apple ecosystem features like Sidecar, where you can use the iPad as a second screen for your MacBook, whether wired or wireless, which is great. And the ability to just push your mouse pointer from the edge of your MacBook to have it go into the iPad and then be able to use your MacBook's keyboard and mouse or trackpad. Again, is great. So many Apple ecosystem features, especially between the iPad and the MacBook, but these are the very two that I actually prefer the most. Now, if you know me, you know I pride myself in the whole concept of not buying things for absolutely no reason or just buying things to show off that I have something. I tend to want to always buy something with good intention, with the intention of actually planning to use it, which was part of the reasons I decided to get an iPad as well. At the time, the iPad felt like a way better option than upgrading my iPhone, and I did say in a couple videos that I would rather buy an iPad than upgrade my iPhone, basically convincing myself that it was a smart purchase because the iPhone just felt way too counterproductive at the time. But with the time owning the iPad, the whole idea just kind of died down. Now, all those were reasons why I wanted an iPad, but this was the reason I actually got an iPad. I own a 16-inch MacBook Pro, and at the time, being a student, juggling schoolwork and building this whole YouTube thing, it was just too much to carry out to class every single day, considering the fact that I have to also carry architecture drawing materials as well. If you know, you know. Of course, I wouldn't edit 4K camera videos for YouTube on the iPad, but more than half of the time, I was doing more admin tasks like planning out videos for YouTube. Being able to have a relatively low weight device for that felt like the way forward. Now, saying this out loud doesn't really make sense now because I'm done with school and that whole hassle is no more part of my life. But at the time, YouTube still is like more of like pre-production than it is post-production. I spend more time scripting a video than I spend actually making a video. Those who know, you definitely know. So there were three things I planned to use the iPad for when I decided to get it. One was to write YouTube scripts on the go without having the weight of a 16-inch MacBook on my back. Two was to get back to drawing as a hobby, which was something I used to do a lot when I was little until architecture basically turned drawing into a stressful and soul-sucking chore. And three, of course, as someone who has never owned a gaming console in his life, I needed it to be able to game and to game well. And by well, I mean 120 Hz refresh rate. But what actually happened? YouTube scripts I rarely ever wrote anything on this because typing on the screen was just not it. It was way too uncomfortable and a big challenge in my opinion. The Apple Pencil is still basically unused. I think I only used it like in my last semester of uni where I used the iPad to like take notes. Since then, I haven't used the Apple Pencil again. I did buy Procreate and Procreate Dreams to help me with the whole idea of getting back into art in general, but I haven't even sat down to learn how to use them. Last thing I remember opening Procreate for was to check out the sketches my boy James made for me for the channel cartoon profile picture and even the banner. So shout out to my boy James for being a real one, basically. But the one thing I saw myself doing like 99% of the time with this iPad in particular was gaming, like to an ungodly amount of hours. The iPad, in the short amount of time that I had it, basically just turned into a more of a distraction device. I would try to get some work done on the iPad or even on the MacBook, and at the slightest glance at the iPad, if I was using a MacBook, I would just pick it up to play Call of Duty or to do something totally different from what I was supposed to do. And that honestly is not what I wanted. It was not what I planned to use the iPad for. It was not what I spent about $500 for. This basically was supposed to help me boost my productivity, but right now it's just doing the direct opposite. It's taking away from my productivity. Now, as much as this feels like a me problem, you could even say it's a me problem. Maybe I lack self-discipline in one way or the other, but like at the same time, I generally feel like it's more or less the nature of the iPad, and I will explain what I mean by this. I don't know if I'm the only one who has noticed this, but the iPad basically just feels like a giant iPhone. Aside the fact that typing on glass never feels right and the Magic Folio case is insanely expensive, and personally I've never bought the idea of buying any kind of knockoff, especially from Temu. Shout out to people who still buy stuff from Temu. The whole device just feels like it was designed more for consumption than actual productivity, and even worse now with things like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and even Netflix having their own dedicated apps on the iPad. And these are things the MacBook doesn't have, and you have to open like your browser to get to. And that little inconvenience is a lot for someone like me. You can do a lot more when it comes to being productive on the iPad than you can on the iPhone. But if you know the Apple ecosystem, if you have any information or any knowledge about the Apple ecosystem, you would know that the iPhone in particular is like the center of that Apple ecosystem. You could have basically all the Apple products, but if you don't have the iPhone, you're basically missing out on a lot of stuff. And for me, the greatest bottleneck over the past maybe 2 years has definitely been my iPhone. Me using the iPhone 11 since 2022 at this point. And I've come to accept the fact after so many back and forth with myself that upgrading my iPhone would basically help me being more productive than the iPad at this point in my life. It sounds like I'm going back on my words, but it's just the reality of it. So in that, I would be selling my iPad if I can, because I'm not used to selling stuff, but I would be selling my iPad to fund my next iPhone. Not sure what I should get, but I'm going to get something. And come to think of it, the MacBook Neo is literally what I wanted the iPad to be for me. It's lightweight, it actually has a physical sturdy keyboard and trackpad, it actually runs macOS, and basically just listening this out now just make me realize that the MacBook Neo is basically a cheaper version of the MacBook Air, but yeah, I'll save this whole topic for another video. Now I want to end with this. The iPad is in no way a bad device. It's been a very unique device ever since it was launched, and it still has the potential to be one of the best Apple devices out there. It could be for some people, but for some certain cases, you always find people, especially doing this kind of admin or productive tasks, always having something bad to say about the iPad. And I've always said it, before you get one, if you're considering getting an iPad, maybe you could even buy mine if you can. If you know me personally, please reach out to me. The iPad is for sale. Before you get it though, make sure you have a solid reason to actually get one. It is great for artists who don't want to spend so much money on buying art supplies, just want to have their work as portable as much as possible. But yeah, it's also great for students who just want to take notes without having the weight of textbooks and having to carry conventional pen and paper. But if you need it for computer kind of tasks, like admin tasks in general, scripts and stuff, it might not just be the best option for you right now. Don't get it for productivity and just end up gaming and watching Netflix like I have. It's not the way to go. For productive tasks, for admin tasks, you're better off just getting a MacBook Neo or even a MacBook Air, a way cheaper one or a much older one, which still works basically. But yeah, you could basically just go for that than getting an iPad at this point. But yeah, that's basically all I have for this video. It's been a long time since I made a video, but nevertheless, I'm back. Check the video on your screen. This is basically my Apple ecosystem. I basically talked about it like a month ago or 2 months ago. Watch that video if you're interested, and I guess I'll see you in the next video.